Hi, I'm Wes Allen with DM Tales, and today I'm going to be looking at Old School Essentials' new zine. This is my look at Carcass Crawler. Let's roll it. So, to get started, let's get one thing out of the way. The name? Ugh. I know that it's put out by Necrotic Gnome and Exalted Funeral, so there's going to be some sort of death theme involved, but that grossed me out. Doesn't change at all how I feel about the product, but I just thought it was kind of funny. Okay, so let's talk about the construction of Carcass Crawler. I was rather interested in the fact that Old School Essentials was going to be putting out a zine, and I wanted to see if they could keep their legendary quality up in such a small format. And they do for the most part. It is very short, so obviously you're not going for even glued binding on this. It is saddle stitched. So it's a nice small, and it fits kind of the zine format. This is exactly what you would expect. The cover is done in a very nice cardstock. It has a little bit of a gloss finish to it, which is very nice, and the artwork is gorgeous, which is what you would expect inside anything Old School Essentials does. Nothing on the interior flaps, so you don't get anything like you would get in the core rulebooks. And interestingly enough, the paper that they use here, as opposed to what you get in the core rulebooks, is glossy. And that really makes the artwork, and it is stunning artwork, as everything Old School Essentials does is, it really pop. It's gorgeous. Has the same wonderful green background for headings and for tables, so you can follow along. It fits right in with the Old School Essentials motif. So everything just looks like it fits and belongs, and I just find that very well done. The Carcass Crawler zine is not a long production by any means. It clocks in at 32 pages, and one of those is for the Open Gaming license, so it's really 31 pages of content that you can use. But inside this little zine, they've incorporated a whole lot. That really speaks highly of just how well the layout of Old School Essentials goes. They can fit a whole bunch in a small area and have it communicate very well. So in this zine, you have 6 new character classes, including 3 race classes. The Gargantua, which is, it's not a Goliath, but it's kind of like a Goliath. A Goblin, which for some reason people of all role-playing tables seem to want to play at some point, which boggles my mind, but hey, it's here. And the Hephaestion, which, if you are reading very carefully, is basically a Vulcan. So if you ever wanted to play a Vulcan inside a role-playing game that wasn't Star Trek, now is your chance. The other interesting character class that they've thrown in here that has sci-fi elements is the Kineticist, which is basically works off mental powers and doesn't wear armor because their increased kinetic abilities give them higher armor classes the more they progress. This is a Jedi. So if you ever wanted to play a Jedi at a D&D style game, here also is your chance. The other 2 character classes are essentially alternative versions of clerics and magic users. The Acolyte is the class that I really like the most out of all these. Kineticist is probably the second most. But I love that you have these things right at the beginning. You can do Bless, you can detect magic, know alignment, purify water, rally people, so you're countering fear or charm, and turn undead. These are now percentile based, and it's a wonderful little chart down here that shows how much that progresses. I would have loved to have an optional rule for points based. So if an Acolyte wanted to excel at one particular skill, like Bless or Turn Undead, they'd be able to progress on that a little faster. But the way this is set up is pretty nice, and you can just apply the Thieves' Rules points progression if you want. It's right there. So kind of cool. I like it. Mage skills, right out the bat, can detect magic, open or close portals, rally fear, that's essentially what Gandalf does in Minas Tirith, read magic, suggestion, again, this is a wonderful Gandalf trick, and their staff is able to do things like Gandalf's staff does. So it's kind of cool. You ever wanted to play Gandalf? Play a mage. It should be fun. Hephaestans also have mental powers that are very akin to what you would see in the Vulcans in Star Trek. Mind control, mind shield, telepathy, A Gestalt is essentially a mind meld, so that's kind of cool. It's an interesting character class. I'm not sure it'd be one that I would want to play, but I can see the appeal. Kineticist, their armor class goes up every level. Don't like that it starts at 10. I think even Padawan should probably have at least an 11 AC, but you can always adjust that if you want. And their mental powers are actually really cool. You can use them a certain amount of times per day per level, and it's really nice. So if you ever wanted to be Darth Vader, or the Jedi equivalent of Darth Vader, tossing around objects at your enemies, you can activate your telekinetic attack and toss things like cargo crates and boulders and things like that. So, kind of cool. I really don't know why people want to play a goblin, but everybody has their own preferences. The one cool thing that goblins can do is they have wolf affinity and they can talk to wolves. I do think that's kind of interesting. And if they roll a really high number on their monster reaction check, they can even get the wolf to consent to have the goblin ride them. So it's kind of interesting. So if someone ever wanted to play a monster class, there it is for you. Now, keeping with Old School Essentials philosophy, you can play either a classic edition of the game where race is class, an advanced edition of the game where you can split race and class, or any kind of mix that you want. Everything is compatible. So going along with that, the 3 new races in the book are also proposed for advanced style play. You can play a Gargantua, assassin, barbarian, cleric, fighter, or thief. You can play a goblin of these particular classes. I think a goblin acrobat would actually be really interesting. And a Hephaestion, I am never going to pronounce that name correctly, one of these levels. Maybe an illusionist or a magic user would be really kind of interesting. And even as a split race class, they get their neuropressure, so they can do the Vulcan neck pinch. So that's kind of cool. The rule that is in this book that I don't quite like is black powder firearms. Now, there's a lot of arguing that's going on about having guns inside a D&D style game. A lot of people think it's not historically accurate, which is kind of silly because it's a fantasy game. The reason why I don't want firearms in my fantasy game is because they're just too real. There's something that's too concrete, too real to have in here. I want something more fantastical. And so that's kind of why I lay off them. But there's some pretty good rules for including them in here, and a good look at the different types of weapons that you can have. And you can build from this, of course. The nice thing about most of your firearms, because they're earlier varieties, you can also use as a club. But if you do an unmodified attack roll of 1 through 3, you break it and you're going to have to take it to a gunsmith before you use it again. So there's that sense of risk that goes in. I actually kind of like that. The 2 optional rules that I really enjoy in this little zine are the combat talents and the D6 based thieves skills. So combat talents are essentially feats for fighters, and they are things that you can pick up at certain levels. So you have a progression that's a little bit like 5e in that sense. But it does make the fighters a little bit more interesting to play beyond 1st through 3rd level, when all the other characters suddenly become very, very powerful, and the fighters are like, must slash with sword, unless they get cool magic items. So I kind of like that they have this. I love the main gauche. You can fight with the dagger in the offhand, and you can choose, does that increase your AC or give you a plus to hit that turn? And I kind of like that. So now you have the option of having a shield, or the equivalent of a shield if you want, or you can say, I need to strike this thing down quick. So that's kind of cool, especially at a higher class where you already have a higher attack bonus, and that +1 might throw you over the top of being able to hit something really difficult. Slayer is also really good because you get a bonus against certain monster types. And I love Cleave because if you do a killing blow, you get a second attack. There's a penalty on it, but you still get that roll, and I really like that. The D6 thieves skills are essentially taking away the percentile-based thieves skills, which folks complain about a whole lot because they are this unusual mechanic inside the game. And that is true. The D6 is kind of a nice mechanic to have. Everything starts out as a 1 in 6 chance, but you have expertise points. So you get to choose what it is that you are good at. And everything increases by 1 in 6. You can't have anything higher than 5 in 6. There always has to be a chance of failure. And you have 4 points to allocate at first level, so you can be really good at something if you want, like sneaking or hiding in shadows. Every time you level up, you gain 2 additional expertise points. Really, really cool. That's something that I actually might consider implementing at some point. The last is just some more ways to fix the thieves' skills. When do you need to make a roll? Does a thief really need to, climb a normal surface? Do they need to make a roll for that? And so it's giving you some more guidance on how you make rulings in those situations and how other characters are able to try to attempt the same sort of things, which skills are thief specific and which are open to everybody. So nothing really earth-shattering in here, but some pretty good stuff. So should you get Carcass Crawler? If you are an Old School Essentials player, yeah, I think you really should. It is $10 for this print copy, although you do have to tack on money for shipping, so it actually was just a little over $15 to get to my doorstep. But when you get the print copy, you also get the PDF. So you are getting 2 products for the price of 1 at that point, and I like the way that Old School Essentials handles giving a digital copy anytime you buy a physical print. You can also buy just the PDF from DriveThruRPG for $7.50. And you know what? If this was coming out every month and you didn't want to totally commit to playing Old School Essentials as your only game and you had to have everything for it, then I could say, yeah, just go out and go get the PDF. But if this is only coming out every quarter or every so often in a year and you want to be able to expand your rule set a little bit for Old School Essentials, this is really worth it. For $15, the quality is very good. It'll hold up nice. Looks very good on a shelf if you want to present it. It's cardstock, so you are going to get some bending. It will break in a little bit, and it is saddle stitch, as we said in the review. So you're not going to get that legendary Old School Essentials quality in construction because there's only so much you can do with a 32-page booklet. But the interior is beautiful, the artwork is great, and I love the rules that they added. So yeah, if you want to play Old School Essentials and you want to get the most out of your game, this is really something you should buy. Next week, I'm going to be talking about some GM tips on world building. Until then, happy playing, everyone.